Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I have for you just a kind of get to know me book recommendation tag. So the reason why I'm choosing to do this book recommendation tag is because recently I acquired some new subscribers. So last Sunday I was in the chat on um, Tiffany from Killing Times with Cozies. Her channel, she does sprints every Sunday. And I, like I said, oh yeah, I have a channel. My goal is to get 100 subscribers. And I got that 100 subscribers that day. So thank you everyone. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for subscribing. And so I decided just to do this tag to just um, kind of give you a little glimpse into who I am. So that being said, before I get started with the books, who I am 46. I am a high school special education teacher, and I, of course, love to read. I also enjoy cross stitching, but I haven't done it really since the pandemic. So I need to get back into that. I got back into reading. I had been in school for several years, acquiring a master's, acquiring my special education endorsement. And I was actually at one time working on a second master's in biblical counseling. So I didn't have a lot of free time for reading, and so I would cross stitch while I would watch TV. But reading for me at the time was not like I did a little bit reading, but it wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be because I was doing so much reading for school. And so I I haven't been in school since 2021, and it's been, or end of 2020, and it's been so wonderful to be able to go and read all of these books that I feel like I've been missing out on for years. So that has been really fun for me. Um, this year I am doing the 52 Book Club reading channel, and you don't have to purchase the journal. I found actually this challenge on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel, and they also have a Facebook group. But you can buy this journal online at Amazon, and it has, so first it has like, here's planning. So it has all the 52 prompts, and you could kind of plan what you want to read. I always plan in pencil because I know that plans change and I can erase things. And then as you read the books and you complete the prompts, you can write a review for each prompt. And then like it's got some mini challenges, a read it, watch it challenge. They have a book club going, so every quarter they pick a book to do. In January, it's Violent Conspiracy. I'm not participating because I've already read Violent Conspiracy. They've got a bingo. Then they've got you can track like every day that you read. I'm choosing to track, I'm reading Count of Monte Cristo right now. So I've broken it down by pages. If I read 19 pages a day, in January and February, I'll be done by the end of February. So I just have, here's like, as I go by the 19 pages that I check off as I read. And then they have a genre challenge. And then they've got their month in review pages. So I'm enjoying this. I like the fact that it's pre-set up for me because I'm busy. And while I do have kind of like a notebook, I also have like a little notebook that I keep track of things in. I'm behind. Like, I need to track what I've read. Like, I try to track what I read each day, and clearly I haven't done that for the last week. That's what happens when you go back to school and you're teacher tired. So, at any rate, that's just a little bit about me. Some things I like to read. I enjoy cozy mysteries. I read a lot of them years ago, and kind of getting back into that. Romance. I really have been enjoying diving into adult fantasy in the last couple of years, and my books that I'll be talking about in this tag will clearly reflect that. So this is the book recommendation tag, and I just found it by just doing a search for a tag because I wanted something to talk about, and I found this on Sara Carrolli's channel. And so here we go. So, oh, also just a note on my journal. This is just a notebook. that I got, again, off of Amazon. The sticker I got off of Amazon. And then this is a Traveler's Notebook cover that I got from Chic Sparrow years ago, and I absolutely adore it. So here we go. So I'll be like glancing between my journal and my books, and then I have my handy dandy bag here to put my books away. So a side note I need to add, I don't edit my videos. I don't know how to. So what you see is what you get. Sliding books, me dropping things on the floor. So yeah, like I said, what you see is what you get. So number 1 on the book recommendation tag is the book that you tell people that it's your favorite. And already books are sliding behind me. And so that would be The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I read this for the first time in like the 7th or 8th grade. Absolutely fell in love with this book. I've read it so many times. This edition is a definitive edition. So when I first read it, I read the original version of it. Otto Frank had left out some material that kind of portrayed the family in not as good of a light. He kept some back that he felt was just too personal about his family. And then also there was some stuff about as Anne was coming into puberty and some of the things that were happening to her as she was going through puberty that was left out. And this has everything put back in the diary. And this came out when I was either in high school or college. I can't remember which. But I read it so many times that when I read this again, I was like, yep, this is new. This is added. I just love this book so much. And I think that everyone should read it. I was actually, in high school, I was in band. I played French horn, and I was able to go on a European tour with my band. That's what we did over spring break. And I was able to go see The Secret Attics. So it was a very powerful experience. Number 2, the prompt is guilty pleasure. Fourth Wing. I love Fourth Wing. I love Iron Flame. I love Xaden. I love Violet. I love Indarna. I love Taryn. I love them all. Okay. And I love it so much that yes, I had the original. Well, I didn't have the one that had the sprayed edges originally. I got the second printing of it. But when this special edition came out, of course, I had to buy it. So yeah, I love Fourth Wing. It's my guilty pleasure. Number 3, a book that you tell people that you loved, but you didn't. None. Because if I don't like a book, I'm going to tell you I don't like it. I don't see any point of saying like, oh yeah, I loved it. That's stupid. At least I feel that way. Like, just be honest. If you don't like it, that like reading's subjective. It doesn't, like what doesn't work for me might not work for you. Number 4, a book that you read the fastest. And that would be Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This is a romance, and it's about a girl who moves into her father's house after he dies, and she's working on breaking up the estate. And she's also working on her dissertation in true crime fiction as a genre. And she just kind of thinks that her next door neighbor might be a serial killer. And it's just a romance. And I read this over the summer. I think I read it in a day because it's a romance and I could read them quicker. And I had the summer off as a teacher, so I just could spend the time reading. Number 5, something that you feel deserves more hype. I actually don't have a copy of the book, so with me right now. What I feel deserves more hype as an author, Tamora Pierce. I feel like so much in fantasy book talk is made of Christopher Paolini. When we look at like younger audiences, Christopher Paolini or Rick Riordan. And my introduction to fantasy when I was younger was Tamora Pierce with the Song of the Lioness quartet, which is about Alana of Trebond, and then also the oh God, the Immortal series, that features Dane and Numair, and that the first book is Wild Magic. Absolutely loved her. I've read those books so many times, and I'm trying to now go back and get those. Number 6, a book or series that's becoming a movie or TV show, and it slid. So now I got to find it. And that would be Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And you can see, like, I tab my books. Most of the time, my tabs are just whatever color, like, I have handy at the time. So I just tabbed like crazy. Some books, my tabs actually mean something. But in this, I just tabbed whatever color I had handy. And this, if you're not aware, is set in a world where people ingest metals and then they can burn them, and that gives them certain powers, like they can push off of coins or metal and travel farther. They can influence people, how they feel. And I enjoy this. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it comes out. Hopefully they don't screw it up. Number 7, a book that you have reread the most. Now, growing up, I did a whole lot of rereading. I've reread Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster a lot, Witch of Blackbird Pond, Diary of Anne Frank I read several times, but I chose to show off a book that I'm hoping to reread again this year, and it's been a while since I've read this, and that's Little Women. And this book, this edition came out in 1986. You can kind of see how worn it is. But it has, if I can find one for you. Oh, I just had it. It has these beautiful illustrations. And I got this for Christmas from my mother. Really my parents, but my mom did all the shopping. And this was one of my mom's favorite books. And we watched, there's a Katharine Hepburn version of Little Women. There's a Liz Taylor and Janet Leigh version of Little Women. And then, of course, the Winona Ryder version. We watched all 3 of those versions together growing up. And my mom passed away on Christmas Day in 2009. And so I keep meaning to reread this book at Christmas time, and it just never happens. And I do watch 5 different versions of Little Women at Christmas time to remember her by. But I'm hoping to reread this year. Number 8, from a genre that you typically don't read from. I typically don't read from nonfiction. I just don't. So one that I really recommend, and I don't have a copy with me, is Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey. And in that book, I read that, oh my gosh, 2 decades ago now. And in that book, he goes through the book of Job, and he starts it off by talking about an encounter that he had with a man who became disillusioned in his faith. And so he goes through and looks at Job and kind of like, why would God basically say to Satan, like, here, I'm going to offer up my servant Job, and kind of let Satan like take away his house, take away his family, put the boils on him, all those things, and allow all the suffering that Job went through. And what do we do with suffering in the face when we know that God is loving and good? Like, how do we align that up and suffering? How do we make those two align in our worldview? And I read that during a time when I was really struggling with my faith and what I felt about God. Another book that I recommend that is in a genre that I normally don't read is What is a Girl Worth by Rachel Denhollander. This is a memoir, and she was instrumental in helping prosecutors build the case against Larry Nassar. She was a gymnast who sought treatment from Larry Nassar, and of course was abused by him. And so this talks about her time growing up, her time in gymnastics, Larry Nassar, her time after Larry Nassar, and then, of course, with the case. And it was really good. It was hard, very hard, but I think it's an important read. Number 9, a book that deserves all the hype, and that is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. I thought this book was so good. It's chonky, but it reads fast, so that's exciting. Some really hysterical moments. If you know, you know, like Boots. Like, if you know, you know. That whole encounter, absolutely stinking hilarious. There were some things that I thought he meant to be surprising, but it wasn't surprising to me. But overall, it just was so good. Best jewel ever that I've read in that book. Number 10, book that I usually recommend when asked. So I have 3 here simply because it really kind of depends on what a person likes to read will determine what I'm going to recommend. So if a person likes fantasy, I'm going to recommend a Robin Hobb book. Now, I would not recommend starting with Fool's Assassin. I would recommend starting with Assassin's Fate, because Fool's Assassin is the 14th book in the series, and Assassin's Apprentice is the first book. But I started reading her, actually. Realm of the Elderlands was my first adult fantasy series. I know it's 16. I decided, let me start reading a 16 fantasy series, right? But the covers are just stunning. They all look like something from like a medieval page. So that's one of the reasons that I was drawn to them. Like, the covers are just so pretty. These are the UK editions. And I realized, like, okay, it's 3 trilogies and then 1 quartet. So let me just start with the first trilogy. And if I don't like it, I could just abandon it after the first trilogy and not feel bad. And I read the first trilogy and loved it. And then I read the second trilogy. And by the time I finished the first trilogy, I knew I was going to be reading the whole thing. And I did. And Robin Hobb has become my favorite author. If I know that the person likes historical fiction, I recommend Homegoing by Ya Gayasi. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name right. What's so impressive to me is this is her first ever novel. And this starts off in Ghana in the 18th century, and 2 half-sisters are born in different villages. One ends up being sold into slavery and taken into slavery. The other one marries an Englishman, and she lives in Cape Town, and he's kind of like the head of the entire slave trade. And so it follows these 2 women's descendants and their lives, and how they have been affected by slavery, both in very different ways. This book is more episodic, like it's kind of like short stories. So each chapter follows a different descendant, and just how the impact of slavery through the generations. And if someone I know likes thrillers, mysteries, I recommend The Sculptress by Minette Walters. And this is a modern day book. I read this like 2 decades ago as well. And it follows, so there's a woman named Olive Martin, and she's in jail for murdering her mother. And it's kind of like a modern day Lizzie Borden. And there's a journalist who she gets a commission to write a book investigating Olive Martin, and did she or did she not commit these murders. And I really enjoyed this book. And for a time, Minette Walters was one of my favorite authors. Number 11, a book that has your favorite characters, and that would be Fool's Assassin. I love Fitz. I love the Fool. I love the relationships with Fitz and Fool. I will say this, that actually in this trilogy, I started kind of beginning to not like the Fool. But I think that's what's so good about Robin Hobb, is that she makes her characters very real. And there's also another character in here that is absolutely my favorite character. And I can't tell you who that is because it's kind of a big spoiler for this trilogy. But just know that if you fall in love with Robin Hobb and you get here, you will know who that character is. Like, I just absolutely adore her. Number 12, a book that you wish you could live in. I don't have that down here with me, but that would be Anne of Green Gables. I've always wanted to go visit Prince Edward Island. I loved the book. I just loved watching the movie with Megan Follows and Jonathan Crombie, and the scenery is just so stunningly gorgeous. Number 13, a book that you thought you would hate, but you ended up loving. There's quite a few here. Like Jade City, I wasn't sure on because I don't like mafia stuff and I don't like martial arts stuff. And I absolutely loved the Greenborn Saga. Beartown, I really did enjoy, and I thought I would hate Frederick Bachman. Actually, that's the only Frederick Bachman book that I've read and enjoyed. I tried Anxious People and DNF'd it really pretty quickly. And then I tried Us Against You, the second book in the Beartown trilogy, and I DNF'd that one pretty quickly too. Just because his style of writing, I feel like, is very, I'm going to tell the reader explicitly what's going on and not allowing the character's thoughts and actions and words really kind of develop the themes of the story. And Anxious People, I just thought he was very condescending to the reader. The tone was very condescending. But in a more recent book, I thought I would hate, but I ended up loving it, enjoying it, was Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Now, I read the Shadowhunters series years ago. I read all 6 of those books. Sorry, my next door neighbor is loud, so if that comes through, I apologize. That's my next door neighbor going. Can't do anything about it. I read Clockwork Angel, the first one in whatever that trilogy is, and I was like, this is just another version of the Shadowhunters, and did not want to continue on with the series. This one I got, I just let me just give this a try. I'll use my Pango. I have a Pango store, and I used the money from my Pango store, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to book 2 when it comes out. I really, so this is her adult debut fantasy novel. And in this world, I can't remember her name, Lynn? It's Lynn and Cal. So Cal is what is the sword catcher. Basically, he's hired, and he's like an orphan brought in, and it's kind of like a body double for the prince. So if there's a situation where they feel like the prince's life might be in danger, he kind of steps in and play acts to be the prince. And then Lynn is a healer. She's trying to be a physician in a world where women just don't do that. And she is brought in to during a failed assassination attempt on the prince. And she is like the race that she is kind of an outcast race. They live in a ghetto. It very much reminded me of Jews during the Inquisition. And I just really enjoyed this book, and I'm looking forward to reading the next one. Number 14, a book that made you cry. And that would be The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Neffinger. I could have used basically every single Robin Hobb book because Robin Hobb is known for ripping your heart out, tearing it up into pieces, and then putting them back together. But I don't feel like I hardly ever talk about this book, and I read it in 2009, and I need to reread it at some point in time. This book, I read this when the movie came out, and I also read this shortly after my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She died later that year, and I knew I knew when she was diagnosed that she probably was going to die, just based on the doctors at the ER, how they looked when they were giving the diagnosis, and also just how they were describing it, how much cancer she had in her system, just at the point of diagnosis. And this book is about Henry de Tamble. He is a librarian and he's a time traveler, and he falls in love with Claire. And just it's their whole love story in this book. And oh man, I'm already I'm tearing up just talking about it. And one of the times that he times travels back to a lot is his mom dies in a car crash. That's not a spoiler. And he travels back in time to that quite frequently, to that car crash, because he was traveling in the car with her when it happened. And as I was reading it, I really like the theme of wanting to go back to those moments in time with your family, with your parents, just really resonated for me. And last but not least is number 15. Something that you wish you could read for the first time. Usually I don't have too many books. I really had a hard time thinking of one for this one. And I finally landed on Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, which this is his memoir. And about being raised in South Africa during apartheid, and then after apartheid was dissolved, and he's half white, half black, and that was a crime back then during apartheid. And there were some moments that were just so stinking funny. I laughed so hard. And the reason why I picked this is why I wanted to read it for the first time is once you kind of know the joke, sometimes it's hard for that joke to land again, or you're expecting it and you don't laugh as hard. And there's this one chapter that's a dance battle that he and his friends go to at a Jewish school, that you're reading it, and on one hand you're just absolutely horrified reading this, and on the other hand you're just laughing hysterically because you're just oh my gosh, they don't know what they're doing, and it's just so funny. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, do all the things on YouTube. Please please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. And if you and for commenting down below, let me know what you tell people is your favorite book. Bye.